All right, guys. Today we are doing part 3 of what's to do with bourbon. Let's get into it. I'm going to stop right there. I keep forgetting to do the real intro for the podcast. That's the intro for all my YouTube stuff. This is the real intro. All right, guys, welcome back again. All right, so today you have to excuse me. I got a little bit of a head cold. I don't know what the deal is. My wife got me sick. I'm blaming it all on her. Those of you on Patreon who are watching this show will notice that I am actually not in the shed today. I am actually in the whiskey room, the unfinished whiskey room. It'll never probably be finished. It's 100 degrees outside already, and I'm actually taking the day off. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. I want to jump right into it. But I'm actually inside, so got a new backdrop. Trying new things. Appreciate y'all for being here. All right, let's get into it. When last we talked about some brands, some history, and we talked about bottled and bond. So basically, what that means now we're going to talk a little bit more about brands and conglomerations of brands, and then we're going to get into another couple of stories, and then we'll just see where that takes us. All right, so let's jump into it. I teased y'all last week about doing the Pappygate scandal, so let's start with that. Let me get my notes real fast. I told you. Okay, so if y'all know anything about Pappy Van Winkle, obviously they're a very sought after distillery, right? They're a very or brand. They are very allocated. They go for a lot of money. The juice inside, it's okay. It's good. It's just one of those things. Anyway, so let's talk about Pappygate. And if you guys know about this, and if you know more than I'm letting on, as you can see, I've gotten pages and pages of notes. If you guys know more about the story, I think there was even a Netflix documentary or something about it. Anyway, we might actually pause and look that up real fast. But anyway, Pappygate refers to the scandal involving the theft of large quantities of high-end bourbon, including bottles highly sought after Pappy Van Winkle from the Buffalo Trace Distillery. The incident came to light in 2013 and drew significant attention due to its rarity and the value of the stolen whiskey. Here's a detailed account of the events. Let's go. All right. The incident. Yeah. Theft discovery. In October 2013, the Buffalo Trace Distillery reported that thefts of 65 cases of Pappy Van Winkle Family Reserve, including 20 cases of 20-year-old and 45 cases of 13-year-old Family Reserve rye, and the estimated value was over $25,000. Pappy Van Winkle bourbon is highly prized and notarized, be difficult to find, offers selling on the secondary market for much more. Okay, then the theft quickly gained widespread media attention, not only because of the value, but the cultural significance of Pappy Winkle among whiskey enthusiasts. The term Pappygate was coined to the investigation process, which, if you know anything about gates, they don't always end well. We'll just say that. The investigation revealed that the theft was part of a larger, more extensive bourbon theft ring that has been operating for several years. In April of 2015, the Franklin County Sheriff's Office arrested several individuals involving the theft of, including Gilbert Toby Kurtzinger, a former Buffalo Trace employee who identified as a key player in the ring. The group was also accused of stealing not only Pappy Van Winkle, but other high-end bourbons, including Eagle Rare. The ring reportedly operated by stealing barrels and bottles from the distillery, often using insider access. The stolen whiskey was sold on the black market. It was estimated that the total value of the stolen bourbon over the years amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars. The individuals involved face various charges, including theft, organized crime. And in September of 2017, Kurt Singer pled guilty to multiple charges and was sentenced to 15 years in prison, though he was eligible for parole 30 days after. What? Like, come on. Okay. Hunt. I'm going to stop right there. No, let me finish. The case highlights the vulnerability in distillery security and the allure of rare bourbon on the black market. Pappygate underscored the growing demand of the black market value of rare bourbons. It also led to an increased scrutiny and security measures within the bourbon industry, preventing similar incidents. The case became part of bourbon folklore and is often cited in discussions about value and scarcity in certain brands. Okay. Wow, we knocked out 2 pages on that one, so that's cool. Let me interject here, like you guys know I like to do. Okay, so I'm not saying that somebody that works at Buffalo Trace isn't tempted to steal some of their whiskey, right? I am not a thief. I am not a crook. All that stuff, right? I get it. But when you see a bottle of Pappy on the secondary market going for $4,000 or $5,000, whatever, and you're not being paid. And now I'm not judging Buffalo Trace's pay scale or anything because I have no idea what it is. But you're obviously not being paid what that bottle's worth, supposedly. Now, retail, it's $100 bottle or $150 bottle. I totally get that. The secondary market, right? Everybody wants these things. I'm not condoning this dude's actions for stealing all that whiskey. I'm not condoning it. But dude got 30 days in jail for stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of whiskey. I mean, to me, again, not saying that he's right in any way. To me, well worth it. If I can get a couple $100,000 and go 30 days in jail, yeah, I know any jail time sucks, but go 30 days in jail, that's nothing. That's literally nothing, right? Like 15 years now, he's probably on probation and there's probably a lot of restrictions. And here's the other thing, he's never going to be able to work in the liquor industry again, and he's probably a felon. So that's an issue. Obviously, nobody wants to be a felon, but because like there's certain rights they get taken away when you are. But I don't know. It's like that's not really that harsh of a punishment for somebody who stole that much whiskey, especially that prized whiskey. And then he said it also said in there about Eagle Rare, which don't get me wrong, I love Eagle Rare. It's a great bourbon. It's like $30-$40. You know what I mean? Like it's like going picking up a bottle of wild turkey. You know what I mean? It's not that big of a deal to me. Some people say they can't get it, and some people will pay $100 for it. And maybe it's easier for him to get the Eagle Rare than it was the Pappy. Obviously, that'd be like going and getting a Blanton's, right? Retail $65 to $75. There's people I know that pay over $100 for it all the time, happily. It just is what it is. It's that supply and demand chain that we're not going to get away from. Not anytime soon. All right. I need a drink of water. It is early. I think we're 9 minutes in. I'll talk a little bit about why I'm doing the podcast, where I'm doing the podcast, and why I'm doing it right now. Okay, so this week's been super hot. All right. So worked a little bit yesterday, or a lot of it, I guess I should say. My wife got a little upset with me because I'm still recovering from all the BS that happened during the fall. So I'm still recovering from that, but I always look at it as my need for money outweighs my physical part of it, which is not how it should be. I told myself when I was going back to work that I was not going to let, what is it? It's not greed, because I'm trying to provide for my family, right? It's not greed. Mm, I'm not going to let the stress of money get in the way of my physical health, right? Does that make sense? And yesterday I did. Yesterday I did. I'm not going to lie. It was 105. Yeah, 105. And I was working till past 5 o'clock. By the time I got home, it was past 5 o'clock. And I was upset. I was upset that my wife was upset with me, right? Because I'm like, why are you mad about this? Like, I'm out there trying to make money for our family because, if you don't work, you don't eat. That's the type of thing. But she was like, here's the deal. Your body is still recovering. It's still going through a process. And putting yourself in that situation only makes it worse. It does not make it better. And I'm like, okay, I do get that. I do get that. And she's like, and that stress on your body is only going to make your body stop. That was weird. It's only going to make your body stop healing. And, it's just not going to work the way that it's supposed to. So we had that little convo, and I said, okay. So I woke up this morning and I said, no, I'm tired. And like I said, I'm a little congested and got a cough. So I'm going to take the day, do the thing, and hopefully tomorrow I can go out and do some things. Now it is in our town, we have a huge fair. I think it's the oldest or one of the oldest in Texas. And it's a huge deal. School is closed tomorrow, that type of thing. So, I got to be available for taking the kids to the fair and doing the dad thing. So I say all that to say this: you guys are getting this episode. By the time you see it, it's way past. I like to shoot everything earlier than I need it because we are actually going out of town next weekend. Y'all don't care. You don't need to know about that. All right, so let's talk about. Okay, I always poo-poo, or I always throw shade, as some would say, on the Big Six. Let me get a drink real fast. I always throw shade on the Big Six. This is water, by the way. And I always take my issues out on them. I do. But the Big Six, and we're going to get into those, they are the backbone of bourbon. They are what bourbon is. You can't go to a craft guy and say, hey, where were you 60 years ago? You were nowhere. You weren't invented 60 years ago. But I can say that Jim Beam was. I can say that Wild Turkey was. I can say, go down the list, right? These guys are the juggernauts. And I use that term very astutely, I guess you could say, because they are literally the workhorses of bourbon. Take that for what it is. Okay, so let's get into some, I use this word a lot, but delineation of the Big Six. Okay. Number one, and this is not in any order of like pravity or anything like that. Is that the right word? That's not the right word. Proclamation. No, I don't. You know what I'm trying to say. Number one, Jim Beam Distillery. Here we go already. Parent company, Beam Suntory, which I think as of right now it has changed to Suntory Beam. If I'm not mistaken, please let me know in the comments. So take that for what it is. They are the bourbons that they own are obviously Jim Beam, Knob Creek, Basil Hayden, Booker's, Baker's, and Old Granddad. Now, my buddies over at Whiskey House Pub House, they just did a video recently about Old Granddad 114 falling off and them not producing it anymore. that has been get into that. I'm not going to really get into that here because there's really no need to. Um, Basically, what it is I think, and this I'm put my hat on here, but I think it is manufactured scarcity, which we've talked about multiple times. They make this scarcity for a marketing ploy so that people go out and buy all the old GD 114. That's what I think. And back in the day, you know, post prohibition, they would distill certain times of the year. They would distill that one mash bill, and then they wouldn't distill it anymore for the rest of the year. I think that's kind of what they're still doing, especially with some of these more boutique-y brands. Now, OGT is just a great bourbon for, some people call them daily drinkers, whatever you want to call that. Like, but it's not like Booker's, right? It's not Baker's, which they're a little more allocated and a little more, like that. Even Knob Creek, even some Knob Creeks can be a little more sought after. Whereas Old Granddad is just like the guy at the bottom, right? It's great bourbon, but he's the guy at the bottom. And then Jim Beam is the namesake, right? Jim Beam, it could be a $10 whiskey, but it is the namesake of the company. Take that for what it is. All right, let's move on. Number 2, Buffalo Trace Distillery. Duh. The parent company, Sazerac. Yeah. They have Buffalo Trace, obviously, Eagle Rare, Blanton's, Pappy Van Winkle, George T. Stagg, W.L. Weller, Sazerac Rye, and E.H. Taylor, along with a couple more as well. But those are the notable ones. So think of a company who has all of those brands under it, and they are independent of each other, right? I have friends and people that I know that are Blanton lovers. I like Blantons. Don't get me wrong. I have one sitting on the bar right here behind my head. That I had opened for a wedding rehearsal that I did recently. I opened that just for them. That's the special perks you get when you hire the shaman out to the house. You get to open a Blanton's, and I offered to leave it there, and they were like, "No." Okay, cool, whatever. The Blanton's for me. They paid for it, so not my problem. Anyway, to have all of these brands underneath your umbrella company, right? They are all money making, all of them. The only one that I would say is a little bit less, would be the Sazerac. I prefer Sazerac Rye. I like a Sazerac Rye. The Thomas H. Handy, that is a really great rye whiskey. Obviously, very allocated, but at the same time, a good, I would say, premium rye whiskey, right? I'm hearing weird stuff, man. It's creeping me out. I'm home alone. No. Okay, so let's move on to 3. So Wild Turkey. Yeah, Wild Turkey. Their parent company is Campari. Take that for what it is. And then what I'll do is we'll go back. I might have done this, but we'll go back. They have Wild Turkey, obviously, which has a number of different SKUs, right? And by SKUs, I mean different bottlings that they have. They have the Wild Turkey 101, the baseline, a couple other ones, the rare breed, stuff like that. Then they have Russell's Reserve, right? Which is the same thing, but only a little bit different. It's more of a premium brand, if you would say that. And then they have the Long Branch, which is actually a really good whiskey. That's charcoal milled, mesquite charcoal, actually. Anyway, so that's the only 3 on there, which is pretty cool. So Wild Turkey owns all 3 of those brands. Then we go to Heaven Hill as number 4. Heaven Hill's parent company is Heaven Hill. They own Evan Williams, Elijah Craig, Henry McKenna, Old Fitzgerald, Larceny, Parker's Heritage, Rittenhouse Rye, Pikesville Rye, and a number of other brands that are less known. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird that Evan Williams and Elijah Craig are in the same brand, because to me they taste completely different. Yeah, they taste completely different. they are more dissimilar than they are similar. Like, you know how like people say with Jim Beam you get that nutty note, that peanutty note, right? With Evan Williams, I get a super high cherry, and with Elijah Craig, I get very little. Anyway, that's just personal preference. So number 5 is Maker's Mark. Yeah, Maker's Mark's parent company is Beam Suntory. Yeah, they were bought out by Beam Suntory. So that's kind of cool, kind of not, whatever. And their markers are Maker's Mark 46, and Maker's Mark Cat Strength, and their limited edition releases and stuff like that. You know all those. Okay, so another one that people don't think about a whole lot, and we're going to get into a story about them here in a minute, is Four Roses, right? Four Roses' parent company is Kirin, Kirin Brewing Company, which, have you ever heard of them? Right? Exactly. So they have Four Roses Yellow Label, Four Roses Small Batch, Four Roses Single Barrel, and Four Roses Small Batch Select. All of those, besides maybe the Yellow Label, depending, all of those are great. They're great whiskeys. They're not bad at all. So yeah. So here's a little bit of history of each one, and then we'll move on to my story. Jim was established in 1795, one of the oldest bourbon distilleries in the U.S. They are known for a wide range of bourbons of innovating small batch and single barrel offerings. Buffalo Trace claims to be the oldest continually operated distillery in the U.S., with roots going back to the late 1700s. They have famous limited releases and high-end bourbons like the Antique Collection and the Van Winkle. Wild Turkey, they were founded in 1869, known for the high rye bourbons and bold flavors. Jimmy Russell is a legend in the industry. Heaven Hill, they were founded in 1935, shortly after Prohibition. They have a large portfolio covering a range of price points, from value brands to premium single barrel offerings. Maker's Mark, they were established in 1954. They were famous for their red wax dipped bottles, and they focus on a wheated bourbon known for a smooth and mellow flavor. And they've also been in the same family this entire time. Even though they got bought out, they're still owned by the same family, which is pretty cool. Four Roses was established in 1888, has a unique history of being more popular internationally with resurgence. Known for its 10 distinct bourbon recipes, which allows a wide variant of flavored and different products. Okay, so let's move on to what I was trying to say. Earlier. So I had said something about on the last podcast, or the last bourbon podcast. I got to scoot back a little bit. Sorry, guys. I'm sitting on like a stool because a chair made me sit way too high. I don't know. It's not for visual, whatever. It's fine. Let's talk about Four Roses, right? I really feel like they don't get a lot of love. I don't know if I have a Four Roses. I just thought about that. I don't know if I do. I'm going to pause real fast and check, because luckily all my whiskey's right behind me. No, I don't have one. It's very strange. I really want to get a single barrel proof from Four Roses. I've only had the single barrels, which are excellent, and the small batch select and the small batch and stuff like that. The single barrel, just the regular, is like 100 proof or whatever, is really nice. Don't get me wrong, it's really nice. I think I gave the last one away at the benefit I had last year, so it was for a good cause, I guess. So it's fine. All right, let's talk about Four Roses. And I'm sorry if my voice is being stupid. Four Roses Bourbon is a well-respected name in the bourbon industry, known for its unique approach in crafting whiskey. Founded in 1885 by Paul Jones Jr., the brand has stories of history making both innovation and challenges. Four Roses is distinct that they use 2 different mash bills and 5 separate yeast strains, resulting in 10 unique bourbon recipes. These recipes are used in various combinations to create their core products, including Four Roses Bourbon, formerly known as Yellow Label, Four Roses Small Batch, and Four Roses Single Barrel. So this next header is the 1980s foreign market issue. The 1980s were a tumultuous period for Four Roses, largely due to its owner at the time, Seagram's, and their strategic decision, which had a long-lasting effect on the brand's reputation and market presence. So the 80s for whiskey was not great, right? Everybody was drinking clear spirit. We remember that, right? So the heading is a shift in focus onto the international market. In post-prohibition era, Four Roses was a highly popular brand in the United States. However, after Seagram's acquired the brand in 1943, they decided to focus their efforts on promoting Four Roses primarily in foreign markets, particularly in Europe and Asia. This decision was driven by Seagram's belief that American market was becoming too saturated with whiskey brands, and they sought greater growth potential abroad. During this period, Seagram's made a controversial decision to remove Four Roses Bourbon from their U.S. market entirely and replace it with a lower quality blended whiskey under the same name. This move tarnished the brand's reputation domestically, and as the new product was not well received by consumers who had grown accustomed to the high quality bourbon they associated with Four Roses. So they basically were like, no, this is Four Roses. And they gave them some blended whiskey. You know what I mean? It's kind of shady, bro. Kind of shady. The Japanese market in particular became a significant focus for Four Roses during the 80s. Japan had developed a strong affinity, sorry. I can't write. For American whiskey, and Four Roses Bourbon became one of the top-selling brands in the country. While this helped sustain the brand during a period where American whiskey was on decline domestically, it also meant that Four Roses became almost exclusive associated with the foreign market, which, if you're, we'll talk about it in a second, sorry. The decision to prioritize the foreign market over domestic one had long-term consequences. In the U.S., Four Roses' reputation suffered due to perception of no longer producing high-quality bourbon. Meanwhile, international markets and brand maintained strong presence, but it became somewhat disconnected from its American roots. Sorry, not sorry. It wasn't until 2002 when Japan beverage company Kirin acquired a Japanese. Okay, so maybe it's a beer, right? I think I've had it. It's pretty good. Anyway, acquired the brand. That Four Roses began to rebuild its reputation in the U.S. market. So you're talking 22 years ago, right? From the recording of this. That's crazy. They've been around forever, and it wasn't until 22 years ago. Everybody's like, oh, get you some of this. Under the new leadership of Master Distiller Jim Rutledge, Four Roses reintroduced its high-quality bourbon into the U.S., gradually restoring the brand's standing among American whiskey enthusiasts. The brand's focus on quality, transparency in production, and unique approach to blending different recipes has since solidified its place as a respected name in the bourbon industry once again. Wow. The 1980 foreign market strategy is a significant chapter in Four Roses' history, demonstrating how business decisions can have far-reaching impact on brands' perception and market success. So that's the thing. I mean, again, I'm going to say this again. I've said it 100 times, and I'll probably say it 100 more. Whiskey is a business, right? At the end of the day, the whiskey is a business. So these guys are out here, and I hate to say it. I hate to talk about the big. No, I don't. I screw the big guys, right? But like their bottom line is, unfortunately, takes place above what the whiskey is. They're not trying to put the best whiskey forward. They're just trying to make the most money for what they got. And so then they take a subpar whiskey and tell American market, here, this is good enough for you. We're giving all our other stuff to Japan. For an American brand, and they, they were owned by Seagram's, which is a Canadian brand, but anyway, that's beside the point. For an American brand to, I'm not going to say it like this, but to turn its back on America and focus on the foreign market is kind of crappy, right? It's kind of like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, you are an American brand. Your people work in America, right? And you're not focused on your people's background, their back door. You're not even marketing to America. You're marketing to a foreign market. That to me is super shady. Super shady. Now, I will tell you this. They turned it around, and it's actually very sad that the Japanese company that bought them turned around and said, no, we're not doing that. You guys are an American company. You need to stay in America. Now, they do still import to overseas, obviously, but they have since then pushed the American market. In 22 years, they've been able to rebuild that brand into a big six. That to me is pretty impressive. But it took a foreign person looking at it saying, this is not cool. Why are we doing this? Right? To me, looking at it, on this side, to me, I'm like, that was a dumb marketing strategy to begin with. Now, did they make money at it? Absolutely. Absolutely. It would be like, and I don't know, there probably is, it would be like a Japanese whiskey company selling all of their product to America and keeping none for its local people, right? Only, not trying to say anything, the U.S. has a lot of people in it, right? So its market is more varied, whereas in Japan, the market is a lot smaller. Yes, there's a lot of people in certain areas, but it's also, once you're outside of like Tokyo and some of the other places, there's really not that many people. Does that make sense? I don't know the total population of Japan or the U.S. And it doesn't matter, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like, if you're an American made, supposedly an American made company, and you're not supporting American made people and supporting the American made market, then what are you doing? There's companies out there right now that have been American made from the beginning, and then they get bought up by other companies, right? It's a thing. It's life, right? I think Harley Davidson, right? Didn't Harley Davidson get bought up? They were an American brand. Craftsman, right? Craftsman Tools. Their moniker was made in the USA, right? And they might still be, but now Craftsman isn't like the household brand, right? Household brands, DeWalt or Milwaukee or whatever, and those are mainly outsourced to China. Anyway, I get off of that. I digress, so to speak. But yeah, no, that to me was really interesting, and I hope it was interesting for you guys, because bourbon, especially, is America's spirit. We've already talked about that. So, and I'm not saying I don't want Japan and China and India and all those people to have bourbon, to have access to good bourbon, not just your bottom shelf blended bourbons like Kessler's or something like that. I'm not saying give them the Kesslers, right? I'm saying if they want some Blantons or whatever, give it to them. That's fine. But don't give all of it to them. Don't give them all your Four Roses, right? And give us some BS. That's just me. This is an opinion-based podcast, so take that for what it is. I thought it was very interesting. So I'm going to pause real fast. All right, guys, I was just looking through my notes, and there's a couple of ways we can go. We can continue talking about the Big Six and talk a little bit about how, Diageo bought Bullet, and Brown-Forman bought Woodford. But I'm just going to say it like this. They're all in bed together. They're all just They're like Ouroboros, they're eating their own tail over there. I kind of wanted to talk about something else that I thought was cooler than that, and it has very much to do with bourbon. So we know, let me get my head straight real fast. We know that the guidelines for bourbon is it has to be taken off the still at no higher than 160, proof down to 125, put in a new charred oak barrel. That's not always the case. Okay, maximum 125, right? That was the maximum, the legal maximum. So we're going to talk a little bit about barrel entry proof, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about the the difference of the barrel entry proof. So let's get into it. All right, I feel like I need transfer music. Ready? I don't know if you guys can even hear that. Okay. Barrel entry proof refers to the alcohol proof, which is distilled spirit placed into a barrel. Proofing is measured the spirit's alcohol content, where the proof number is twice the percentage of alcohol, or ABV. For example, 100 proof bourbon would be 50% alcohol. Okay. Historical context. Pre 1962. Historically, distillers in the United States would typically enter the barrel at a much lower proof than commonly today. Many distillers filled the barrel with bourbon around 100 to 110 proof. The lower entry proof helped to maintain more original grain flavor and the characteristic, as well as a subtler, more delicate flavor that hopefully it could be lost in higher alcohol content. In 1962, the federal government raised the maximum allowed barrel entry proof from 110 to 125. This change was made largely for economic reasons. Higher proof distillation and barrel entry means that the distiller could store and age more alcohol in a smaller number of barrels, therefore reducing the cost related to the barrel production and storage space and aging time. Since water was often added to the bottling to bring it down to the desired proof, entering the barrel at a higher proof means less water was needed, effectively stretching the spirit further. Okay, I get what they're trying to say, but we'll talk about it in a minute. The change to a higher barrel entry proof has significant implications of the flavor of the bourbon. Higher proof spirits tend to extract different compounds from the wood, resulting in different flavors. Some argue that bourbon aged at lower entry proofs have a richer, more nuanced flavor as the spirit interacts more gently with the barrel. Higher proof entry can lead to more intense flavors such as stronger vanilla and caramel notes, but also may mask some of the more delicate characteristics of the whiskey. Economically, the higher proof allowed distillers to be more efficient, as mentioned earlier. It also becomes a standard practice amongst the industry, with most distilleries adopting the new 125 proof limit. However, some distilleries, particularly those focused on traditional methods and produced specific flavors, continue to use the lower entry proof even after it's changed. I'm sorry. Today, while the legal maximum entry proof remains 125, some distilleries choose to enter the barrel at lower proofs to achieve the desired flavor profile. This decision is part of the art of whiskey making, balancing economic considerations with the goal of producing a bourbon what is desired and complex. In summary, the increase of barrel entry proof in 1962 was a significant change driven by economic factors that allowed distillers to produce more whiskey at lower cost. But alternatively, the flavor profile of the bourbon. Some distillers continued to use the lower proof, blah blah blah, to embrace the higher proof's bolder flavor. Okay. So what do y'all think about? What do y'all think about that? I totally understand. I'm going to pull a bottle, a cast strength bourbon, or a well, rickhouse proof, or whatever you want to call it. Look at this. I got one. I got one. Now, this is a sample that was sent to me from Shire Distilling. We've already done their podcast months ago. This was hand pulled out of the barrel for me. Not trying to flex on y'all. This is their Percheron French Oak cast strength, finished in French oak staves. It is 118 proof. So their barrel entry was actually 110. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? Because, and we've talked about this possibly numerous times, but I'm going to reiterate it for those who weren't listening, those in the back who are just falling asleep to my soothing voice. No. When you put, okay, so let me start at the beginning. When you distill bourbon, okay, it has water in it, right? You put it in the barrel. You're taking it off at no more than 160, right? So 80% alcohol. So what is the other percent? It's 80% alcohol, but it's 20% water, right? Well, and other congeners and stuff like that. It's made, there's somebody who can do the science on it. That's not me. I'm not the whiskey scientist. So then they proof it down, obviously, because you don't want to put it in at 160 proof, because that's obviously not legal. The maximum is 125, okay, to be considered bourbon. Can you go higher? Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of brandy producers that are putting it in the barrel at 140. Mm-hmm. Now, that is in Cognac and Armagnac and places like that where the climate is, it does get hot, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot more temperate than, say, Texas, for instance. So, I say all that to say, when you have to proof it down even more to, say, 60% alcohol, just to make it an easy round number. So it's 60% alcohol, 40% water, right? 40% water. That water interacts with the wood. Have you ever had a piece of wood and you soaked it in water, right? You ever done like cedar plank salmon? A lot of times people use salmon. You get a cedar plank, you put it in water, right? Because you don't want it to burst into flames. And then you take that cedar plank out of the water before you go to put it on your grill with your salmon on it. And that water is like red because the water has penetrated into the wood. Now, I am not a biologist either. I'm not the whiskey biologist or a scientist or whatever. I'm not a tree dude. But what I'm saying is there is a interaction between the water and the wood. Conversely, I think that's the word. I'm not good with words, okay? I am just a dumb plumber who is, trying to do the best he can. Conversely, alcohol, ethanol, which is what we want, obviously, that's the whiskey part of it. Ethanol does the same thing, only it pulls out different congeners, different things in it. But there's also different aldehydes, not hopefully not formaldehyde, but there's some different acyl. Oh, I can't say it. I can't say it. I don't know. I don't know the terminology for it. It doesn't matter. So when that, like, let's say it was a 100% alcohol, right? It's going to take the most out of it. But when you have a proofed down version of that, you're there, and there's a graph. You can find them online, like a wood graph, to where a char and toast at this profile with this amount of spirit supposedly gives you these flavors. I know my buddy Jesse from Stillet, right? He has put that graph out multiple times. I know Chris Conrad with Bad Motivator Legacy. He has done that as well. He's put that thing out on his website and stuff, so you can kind of check. You can check what you're looking for, and so you can find that sweet spot, right? Okay, so if we put it in at 60% alcohol and it has a level 3 char, and you know what I mean, and we should be able to get this profile. That's why most bourbon is caramel vanilla, has a little cherry in it, and then you get some of the graininess, right? Like you get that dusty corn and stuff like that. Those flavors, what they call the bourbon flavors, are there for that reason. Okay, so I caveat that, and let's talk about people like Iron Root, Still Austin, Leopold Brothers. We haven't talked about them a whole lot. These guys are using techniques for one, they have a lower entry proof, right? More similar to before 1962, anywhere between 110 and 115 proof. They go in the barrel. So the more water is going to interact with the wood differently. And so therefore it's going to give you a profile that is not as astringent and is not as woody. I mean that's the best way to say it. Like it doesn't taste like the wood. Whereas there's a lot of bourbons. Benchmark. Let's talk about Benchmark. They were just acquired by Buffalo Trace as well, right? Sazerac, whatever. And they have a Benchmark full proof, which their full proof is 125. It's 125 proof. So they're going into the barrel at 125. It shows because it's a vanilla bomb, which is cool, but it's also astringent. It's also you get some of that tannicness of the oak. So okay, those of you out there who barbecue and like to barbecue and know how to maintain fire, right? Know how to maintain a fire when cooking with wood. You know that there's a sweet spot when you're, say, smoking a brisket or something like that. There's a sweet spot in the run, what we'll call the run, of you starting the cook and ending the cook. There's a sweet spot a couple hours in where your fire's rolling great, you're hitting good temps, and you're developing good bark on your brisket. Now, why am I talking about brisket? It's making me hungry. But why am I talking about brisket in terms of whiskey? Because it's the same thing. These distilleries find a certain aspect, and they're like, oh, okay, if we go in at 115 and leave it for 4 years, try it. And of course, this is all trial and error. And that's part of the issue with a craft distillery doing this is they don't really, which some of them do, but they don't really have the capital gains to do all these experiments, right? They're just literally, we got to get a product out and it's got to be good. So how do we do that? Right? It makes it a little bit more difficult. Whereas these big guys, they've been doing it for so long, they've honed in their craft and they know today we're making Wild Turkey 101, or they don't make the 101, they make Wild Turkey, that mash bill, and then they do what they got to do to it. And so at the end, they put it in the barrel entry proof just like every other rare breed, right? But they're filling 6,000 barrels of this, right? So they have the ease to just let it sit, and then they just blend it, right? Blending is a huge thing when it comes to whiskey. But if you're a smaller craft distillery and you're doing 5 barrels, it's a lot less easy to blend out something if maybe it's over oaked, right? And just because there are two different things, and I'm sorry, this is getting on a thing, but I think it's a good topic. There are two different things that go on when the barrel interacts. And one thing that you can push and another thing you can't. One is time, right? Time, for one, is a construct. We make it what it is. That's just me. But time, you can't make it. I can't make a 2-year-old bourbon in 2 days because of time, right? Time is the construct in there. You can't. I mean, it has to be. I said it October 1st. October 1st of 2 years from now, it'll be 2 years old. Not a day sooner, not a day later, right? It'll be 2 years old at that time. But the other thing that a lot of people don't understand, and when we talked to Herman over at Dad's Hat, he really kind of pushed this into the forefront of my mind, I guess I could say, that just because the whiskey, if you want it to be a straight bourbon or a straight rye whiskey, it has to be 2 years old. That's a legal nomenclature for it. But that doesn't mean the maturity level of it is at where it needs to be. So we have heard in the past that rye whiskey, and I know we're talking about bourbon, but rye whiskey matures a little faster than a bourbon. The flavors mature a little bit faster. In some instances, not in all. So when you're in the barrel, you have to think about that. You have to think about your maturity level and your age. Because if you're sitting there and you're trying to make a 12-year-old bourbon, like a Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, which they're not so much 12 years old anymore, are they? Yeah. That could be a whole episode by itself, and I'll have a lot of haters there. But so you have this 12-year-old product. Nothing in that bottle can be under 12 years old. You can have a 25-year-old bourbon in there, right? You can have a whatever. Everything has to be at least 12 years old. Now in Scotland, Ireland, places like that, where the climate is different, and they're using previously used wood barrels or oak barrels, depending, it's a lot easier for them to maintain. They're not going to get an over-oaked product ever. Almost never. I don't know if I've ever had a Scotch and I'm like, oh man, that's really oaky. No. Have I had bourbons like that? Absolutely. There are some bourbons out there I'm like, wow, that is, wow. That's like sticking a bunch of wood chips in my mouth. Yeah. Anyway, I say all that to say maturity and age are way different. And we can equate this to people as well. I know grown-ass people, that are 30, 40 years old that act like kids. They literally, the mentality level of them is that of children. Okay, but I also know people that are very young that remember when you say you're wise for your age, right? You're very wise for your age. You're an old soul, so to speak. I think that's cool. And so like I say all that to say this. Don't take a 2-year-old bourbon as a bad thing, right? Is it young? In whose eyes? Just because we're so used to Kentucky bourbon, and this is a caveat. I mean, this is a segue to my next topic. Just because Kentucky has said that most of their bourbons are 6 to 8 years old, and they're really good at 6 to 8 years old. Yeah, they are. They are. A good Wild Turkey, you can see it right behind me, the Kentucky Spirit. It's a great bourbon. It's like 8 years old. But I've also had some Texas whiskeys, which I know, different climate, different this, blah, 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 that are 2 years old, 2.5 years old, 3 years old, that are comparatively just as good. Don't shoot me with that. That's fine. That's fine. And you're going to be like, well, you're just a Texas boy. You're getting paid to say that. Okay, for one, I'm not being paid for anything. The only people paying me are the Patreon that get to see me watch me in the whiskey room. Not sweating as much. There's no AC vent in here. It's right, it's got to come through there. Need a little fan or something. Anyway. So let's talk about some distilleries. Some distilleries that are not Kentucky bourbon distilleries, but they're doing some really cool really cool stuff. And then I have a couple in here that are, well, where is it? Did I not print it out? Hold on. All right, guys. Well, I guess I didn't print it out, so I'm going to read it from my phone. I'm sorry. So here's some whiskey distilleries, bourbon distilleries that are doing some really cool stuff outside of Kentucky. Okay. And this is in no particular order. This is not an order of the best, the least, the worst. It doesn't matter. Kings County Distillery in Brooklyn, New York. They're obviously a craft distillery. They have this straight bourbon that they're doing. They have a peated bourbon that they're doing that's really nice. They're known for high quality bourbons, and they have traditional distilling methods and a creative approach to aging in smaller barrels. All right, then this one, I think they're no longer, or they got bought up. So don't shoot me on this one. Bell Mead Bourbon in Nashville, Tennessee. They are produced by Greenbrier Distilling. They like to do a lot of finishing, cask finishing, and stuff like that. One of their signature products is Bell Mead Sherry Cask Finish. Take that for what it is. I got to sample the Bell Mead Peach Brandy finished. That was sweet. That was pretty good. Anyway, Balcones Distilling in Waco. You knew we were going to go there, right? They are pushing the boundaries. They use blue corn. They have a pot still bourbon, which is pretty cool. It's different than a lot of the other bourbons you get out there on the market. Some people don't like it, and I get it. It's not a traditional bourbon, but their blue corn bourbon, again, not traditional. Then they have a lot of corn whiskeys, which corn whiskeys are not bourbons per se. They can be, but corn whiskeys are normally aged in used barrels. Well, they don't age theirs in used barrels. They use new barrels. So they are considered bourbon. So take that for what it is. But one of their signatures is the Balcones blue corn bourbon. Another one that I hadn't heard of, and when I was looking these up, it kind of struck me, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this one, is Bainbridge. They're an organic distillery in Bainbridge, Washington. They're focused on sustainability and organic product methods. They use 100% organic grains. Low barrel entry proof was in results a smooth, more flavorful bourbon. They've won several awards for their craft approach. And their signature product is Bainbridge Battle Point Bourbon. Wow, that was a lot to say, right? One of my favorites right now, just getting man, struggle bus over here. One of my favorites is Few Spirits in Evanston, Illinois. Few is one of the first distilleries to open in Evanston, which was, if I'm not mistaken, the birthplace of the Prohibition, which is pretty funny. Yeah, they're known for their role in the Temperance movement. Their bourbon are crafted with unique mix of local grains, and they have distinct character to their flavors by using both malted rye and malted barley in their mash bills. Their signature product is Few Bourbon. The Bourbon Jerk, my buddy over there, he just did a review, and I'm hoping to get a bottle soon, or at least a sample of the Few whiskey that was a collab with Smashing Pumpkins. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not the hugest Smashing Pumpkins fan, but this whiskey is super cool. It's their basic bourbon, right? Their normal bourbon, 4-year-old, I think. And instead of, when they proof it down to 92 proof, right? They take it out of the barrel, they proof it down to 92 proof. Why that proof? I don't know. That's where they found it was good. Instead of using water, they use tea from Billy Corgan, the lead singer of Smashing Pumpkin. He has a tea house in Illinois, or in Chicago, I think. They use some of his tea, midnight something tea, in the whiskey. So it's almost like a cocktail, or I guess it would be considered a cocktail. It's not so much whiskey at that point, because when you're proofing from like 115, whatever to 92, there's quite a bit of tea in there. I've heard it makes it like a earthier. I've been really ever since I did the episodes with Whiskey Provisioner, right? And I went over to the West China Tea House. Please go check them out. They are doing some really cool stuff if you're into tea. I've been really into tea. I got a couple of those little sample packs, and I make me a tea at night, and really been diving into it. It's a lot of fun. Some of them are very caffeinated, so just beware that, especially if you're having it at night before bed. You're gonna be like wired. Anyway, I say all that to say, moving on. Smooth Ambler, which was actually bought up by another company, but they're from Maxwellton, West Virginia. They're sourcing whiskeys, of course, but and they're mixing it with their own distillate. Their Old Scout American whiskey, which sounds like it's not a bourbon. I don't know. Anyway, one of the others that's not really distilling their own stuff. High West in Park City, Utah. Yeah, High West is known for innovating blends and finishing. While their range of spirits are limited, their American Prairie bourbon has garnered attention for their balance of flavors and their profile of unique finishing. And one that just came up in my repertoire, or my feed, if you want to call it that, was Catoctin Creek. Catoctin. Catoctin, I guess that's how you say it. Creek Distilling Company in Purcellville, Virginia. They are focused on making organic grain to glass whiskey, and their approach to bourbon is no exception. They use local ingredients and traditions, and their products reflect a deep connection to the Virginian terroir. And their signature product is Catoctin Creek Roundstone Rye. Though they also have a bourbon of the same name. So yeah, that to me, and that's just some. That's just a couple. But I don't. Okay, we're over an hour into this one, and this is not. I don't know if this will be the last bourbon episode or not. I might take a couple of episodes off of it, and then maybe I'll compile some more notes on bourbon, and we'll do a part 4, because I want to give it its due diligence, right? I don't want to just poo-poo bourbon, because I do like it. I like a lot of the bottles I have are bourbon. For one, because when I do tastings, I want to make sure that I have bourbon there, because not everybody likes a Scotch. Not everybody wants an Irish whiskey. Not everybody wants a cask strength Revenant Oak, right? I do, but not everybody wants that. So I have to have things like this. Hold on. It's literally right next to me. Woodford Reserve, Double Oak, right? I have to have this in stock. This is actually a barrel pick from the Barrel Outlaws. Shout out if they don't even know I'm talking. But I got to keep stuff like that around, right? One of the ones that I've been sipping on recently that I thought was really, really nice. Let me get it real fast. Now, one of the ones, of course, right when I come back, I want to cough. What in the world is going on? One of the ones that I've been kind of getting into, it's a little bit different than some of your other profiles. It's none other than Frey Ranch. Now, these guys are out of Nevada, if I'm not mistaken. This is a single barrel pick, of course. Yeah, they're out of Fallon, Nevada. And this to me is super, super grainy, it showcases the corn and the the rye, but like when I'm talking rye, I mean like the actual grain. I don't know if you've ever had like hand crushed rye bread, where they like crush the rye and it's in the bread, like little pieces of it are in the bread, and it's almost like I want to say the whiskey's almost crunchy, right? It's almost like you can taste it. And I don't remember what the age of this is. It is straight, so it's at least 2 years. We know that. Um, this is thrilling, isn't it? This is bottle 190. Um, I love the bottling. It's really nice. Um, so this is a 4 grain actually. It says distilled from 4 slow grown grains. So I'm guessing and I think everything is grown on their ranch, if I'm not mistaken. That's super cool. And that's one of the things that I've been talking to a lot of distilleries, as you well know, and a lot of them are talking about sourcing practices and where they're getting their grain from and their water from, and like Devil's River is getting their water from the Devil's River. It's just trying to do really cool, unique things, but also thinking about their terroir, thinking about their, um, I don't want to say their effect on the climate, but like they're trying to source locally to help the local farmers and be like, hey, I need rye. Can you make rye? Yes, you can make rye. Cool. You're literally 15 minutes away from me. That's super cool. Like when we talked to Kyle over at Holiday, he said that he gets most of their grain not 15 minutes from their house. That that to me is super cool. So I don't know what y'all think. All right, so I'm going back to my thing, and then I'll get out of here. Hold on, I need water. So I okay, so for me saying all the things about non-Kentucky and not this, and it sounds like I'm bad mouthing Kentucky. It really does, and I'm not. Kentucky bourbon is doing amazing things, and they are trying to innovate and trying to do different things like the craft guys, like with Jim Beam coming out with their Claremont Steep, trying to make a single malt, and Heaven Hills now doing their grain to glass type things. I get that. I get that. I'm not telling the big guys, the Kentucky guys, to stay in their lane. I'm not saying that at all. They can do whatever they want, and they could probably do it very well. So what I want to do is I want to incorporate some Kentucky distilleries that are not the big six, that are doing some really cool things. So let's talk about those, and then I'll get out of here and let y'all have your day. Hopefully this episode finds you well and finds you healthy and finds you in love with whatever you're doing. Hopefully someone, but in love with what you're doing. So one of the big ones, and this is a bigger distillery, but they're not huge. New Riff in Newport, Kentucky. New Riff is a relatively new player in the Kentucky bourbon scene, but they've quickly made a name for themselves with a commitment to quality, transparency, and traditional practices like the Bottled and Bond standards. I've had a couple single barrels of theirs, really nice, really nice. A little spicy for me, but really nice. Number two, Wilderness Trail. They're in Danville, Kentucky. I don't know where any of these places are, so don't ask me. Wilderness Trail is known for their sweet mash process and focusing on producing high quality aged bourbon. They become a fan favorite among bourbon enthusiasts as the attention to detail and quality. Their Wilderness Trail single barrel bourbon and their rye whiskey. I have a pick of theirs that I haven't opened yet. I mean, as you guys can see, well, the Patreon guys can see, I have a lot of whiskey behind me, but like all the whiskey on the floor. And I'm one dude, and I don't drink that much anymore. So it's like, I'm getting through it. I'm trying to. So if anyone would like to send me samples, no, it's fine. So the next one is pretty cool. I've got to have one bottle of theirs, I think. Kentucky Peerless. They're in Louisville. Uh-oh. Did I say Louisville instead of Louisville? Oh man, maybe I did. I don't know. It says Louis, but is there a Louis or a Louis, or is it Louisville? Louisville? Louisville. Sorry. If it is Louisville, I'm sorry. Peerless is a historic brand that was revitalized in 2015. They focus on small batch productions with sweet mash fermentation and barreling their own whiskey at a lower proof. See, it like it keeps coming back to that lower lower proof point, which is, kind of like topic of the day. Their products are non-chill filtered and have been well received uh, received for their rich flavor. Their notable product is the Peerless Bourbon and the Peerless Rye, and they just came out with a double oaked that I've heard is really nice. Number 4, Castle and Key, Frankfort, Kentucky. I know I got that one right. Castle and Key operates in the Old Taylor Distillery, which has been beautifully restored. They focus on producing small batch bourbons and ryes using traditional methods and grain to glass approach. The distillery has gained attention for its high quality spirits and stunning location. So evidently, it's a pretty place. Um, Oh, Restoration Rye, first released was in 2022, so it's fairly new. This next one I'm going to skip over. Yeah, it's Willet Distillery from Bardstown. I don't care for them. I don't like their product that much, and that's not me being a hater. It's not. I feel like they are a bigger brand, and now they've become super tater. Everybody wants that Willet purple top, I don't know. There's something about them I don't care for. Well, it's the flavor mainly. Yeah. Anyway, that's personal preference. They are doing amazing things in their own right. Now number 6, Bardstown Bourbon. Yeah, Bardstown Bourbon Company. Where are they located? Bardstown. Yeah. They were founded in 2014. They're known for their innovative approach and collaboration with other distilleries and brands. They offer a fusion series which blends older source bourbons with their younger distillate, as well as their discovery series that features older sourced whiskeys. So they're making some stuff, they're not making some stuff. So you just gotta. That's the thing with some of these. You're like, now if you don't care, it doesn't matter if they're making good stuff. And I've had a couple of Bardstowns, very good stuff. Like, no, I haven't had an issue with it. Bardstown Bourbon Fusion Series. Okay, number 7, and I hadn't heard. Okay, if I read my own thing, um, James E. Pepper. Yeah. Revived after being dormant for decades. How that happens, I don't know. The James E. Pepper Distillery has been restored in Lexington, and they focus on producing high quality bourbons and ryes. Their emphasis on traditional methods, including the historic copper pot stills. They have a 1776 bourbon and rye. Copper and Kings from Louisville, Kentucky. Although primarily known for their brandy. So if you guys know anything about Copper and Kings, that is one of the places where my buddy Alan Bishop started. He was working with them and did a whiskey program for them, but he was making all kinds of stuff for them. So that's kind of cool. They have ventured into whiskey, and they have an innovative approach such as aging whiskey in unconventional barrels like brandy or sherry, and they produce American brandy with a whiskey profile, and they have their cask strength American craft whiskey. All right, so here's another one that I'm not saying I don't like it. I just don't. It's not something I go pick up at the store. Does that make sense? Is Michter's? Yeah, Michter's Distillery. While Michter's has a historic roots chasing back to Pennsylvania, where they started making rye whiskey, the brand was received in Kentucky in the 1990s. Their distillery in Louisville produced a small batch bourbon and rye. They are known for their meticulous attention to detail from the barrel selection and proofing. Now, I will tell you this, and this, if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments down below, or in somewhere. They were sourcing for a long time. They were sourcing whiskey from somebody, and I don't know if they're not still doing it. I don't know, but they were sourcing for a long time, and I don't know if maybe that just kind of turned me off on them, which I have no problem with sourcing. Maybe I just gave them a bad rap, but they have their Michter's US1 and their 10-year. MB Roland from Pembroke, Kentucky. MB Roland is a grain to glass distillery located in western Kentucky. They focus on producing small batch, unfiltered, and often cask strength bourbons as well as other spirits. They are known for their use of local white corn and a distinct full body flavor. Their MB Roland straight bourbon, their dark fired Kentucky straight bourbon. That sounds pretty awesome. Yeah, and these guys are just some. There's just some, but you have to think about it like Indiana distilleries. If you're at Indiana distilleries, which there's a couple of them, and you say distilled in Indiana, everybody's going to think you're MGP, right? So Kentucky guys, if you're not the big guys, everybody's going to be like, oh, you're sourcing from one of the big guys, right? You're sourcing from 1792, whatever. So that's the only issue I see with being a craft distillery in Kentucky is you're fighting an uphill battle the whole time because there's a lot of big players. When you have all of the big players besides Jack Daniels, obviously, they're in Tennessee, but when you have all of the big players in your backyard and you're over there trying to produce a grain to glass and blah blah blah, all this stuff, and these guys are cranking out more barrels than you'll ever make in your life in one day, it's a little daunting. I can see how it's super daunting for you to even take that on and be like, hey, I'm just trying to carve my niche in the thing. Yeah, cool. No, I thought it was cool. So I do have a lot more notes. We're not going to get into it, but it talks about Stitzelweller Distillery. So maybe we'll do a part 4. How about this? I've said this multiple times, but how about this? I will do a poll. At the end of this episode, I will do a poll and I will say, hey, do y'all want part 4? Do you want more bourbon? And if you do, then I'll do it. But here's the deal. I need you guys to, I need your help. Not only physically, mentally, spiritually, but I need you guys to share, like this, leave a comment, leave a review, preferably 5 stars, if you could. That would be great. Because the only way that this show is going to get seen by other people is, for one, if you share it, and for two, if you write a review. Because then the algorithm, the dreaded algorithm, sees that and is like, oh, this guy has 5 reviews, 12 reviews, 1,000 reviews. And they're like, oh, well, we're going to start promoting it because it has a lot of reviews. So I'm not trying to do this to be a thing, but you know what I'm saying. I could use help whenever I could get it. Okay. So I thank you all so much for hanging out with me. And this has been a ride. And we got into a lot of bourbon things. And I feel like it went well. I would have liked to have had a dram with you, but at the same time, it's it's a little early for that. So we're not going to do that. But I appreciate you guys being here and hanging out with me and having fun. And yeah, it was a good one, and I think that yeah, we're learning together some of this stuff, which is kind of cool. So I appreciate it. And if you guys need to reach me, whiskeyshamanpodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to send samples to me, just let me know. Reach out to me. I will do a full review on the show. Maybe I don't know. If y'all are into stuff like that, I thought about doing a breakdown of a distillery and a review of their spirits. I thought that might be a cool episode to do. And if y'all want any episodes like the best whiskeys to buy, like stuff like that, I can do that as well. Of course, it's going to be opinion based because that's all I can give you is my opinion. I could go by market data maybe. I could ask my buddy Justin to give me some market data on that, but it's one of those things. I want to do a quick shout out to my sponsors, Bad Motivator Barrels. There's always a pinned link down below. You go over there and it gives me a little ding every time you buy a barrel. And I'm going to let you guys know right now, I am fixing to do a giveaway. I said it, a giveaway. I might have already done it by the time this episode comes out, of a Bad Mo Infinity barrel. So if you want in on that, you better get over there right now. Better get over there right now. Um, I don't know exactly. I think I'm going to do a live stream, give it away on the live stream, something like that. Anyway, thank you, Chris over at Batman Legacy. I appreciate that. We're working together trying to get some cool stuff going. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And my buddy Zach over at Z Smith Whiskey and Mixology. Brother, you're the man. I love you. He's cocktail curator. He does bar back stuff. He writes lists of whiskeys you need in your bar. He does private tastings for people. This man is doing the Lord's work. Let's just say that, okay? You need to get over there and go to Z Smith Whiskey and Mixology, and I'll have him linked down below as well. And hopefully very soon, I'm working with another sponsor. Hopefully very soon they will come on and we'll be able to talk a little bit about them. But just know that stuff is in the works. I'm constantly grinding, guys. I'm trying to make the best product I can. So just I, I'm trying. I just know that I'm trying. So I thank y'all for being here. Y'all be good. It's hot. Drink water, please. I don't need nobody getting heat stroke out there. Okay, please. And until next time, keep your spirits up. Love y'all.